most of the time when there's been what I call a real professional job, it's the old double or quadruple tap thing. People, there's a story. The story that is in my book that I think is the best illustration of a proper professional hit in this country was the murder of a completely innocent woman by mistake. They thought they were going after her sister. Her sister had been married to a guy who was from one of the former Russian states. There was a couple of murders in London to do with Chechens, when none of us knew who Chechens were and what Chechnya was. And one of those people involved in those murders was married to a British woman, in fact, a British journalist who worked for the BBC Foreign Service, but had been to university in Moscow and had met her husband out there. He was linked to Russian secret services and all the rest of it. We didn't know this, but after the whole shenanigans involving her husband and the shootings of his colleagues in London in '93, she was sent out of London to live with her sister in Surrey. Right. And one night, I think it was the following year, '94, over the Easter bank holiday, she had gone out, but her sister, who was a woman called Karen Reid, was at home with a friend of hers. They were in a glass of wine in the kitchen. Doorbell rang, 8 o'clock, I think it was on a Saturday evening. She answered the door. There's a bloke there with a pizza box. She said, "Did you order pizza?" She said, "Sorry, darling." She was shot with 5 mercury tips, parabolum, what they call, frangible rounds designed to explode in the body. Jeez. That's what I call, that's a proper contract killing. Yeah. And what was interesting was, that nobody will ever talk about that job. The SIO on that job, who was a Surrey officer, went off to work for British Airways or something like that in his retirement, and I approached him a few years ago. He still won't talk about it. Because basically, I don't think he was ever allowed. I don't think he was ever allowed to know what the intelligence was, if there was intelligence around that job. But sorry, just to rewind to Jill Dando. So that's at that extreme end. You say, look at that. That is. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't mean to kind of to praise or to sound as if I approve of what went on there, but that's kind of like, in terms of assassination, that's a quality job. That's a top pro done that. Look at Jill Dando. I think that was a chancer, and also there's this extraordinary business of. She wasn't even living at that address at that time. She was living at somebody. She was engaged to a bloke who lived on Chiswick Mall, a few miles away. She was living with him. She was only going back to the house when she had 10 minutes spare to do it, to pick up the mail or whatever. So she wasn't doing anything routine. It wasn't pre-planned. It wasn't plotted surveillance. Correct. No one could do, because she didn't have a routine around that address. It was just like, I'm not on duty for 2 hours. I'll just go and get a pint of milk, and while I'm there, on it. Right. I was once interviewed by Fiona Bruce about, I think it was on Rachel Nickell, and I was privileged to be told right from the start what they were doing around Rachel Nickell, which is in the book. And I said to somebody involved in that, at CNN, I said, mate, honestly, even maybe not my position, but how on earth have it gone fucking right? Yeah. Don't have it go evidentially, won't be of any value, even if they find the knife. Because, there's the old thing about, it's not designed to get a confession out of him, he's got to take her to the knife and only hit. If he thinks there's a shag at the end of it, he might, his defense he put the knife there in order to find it, to show it to her. So, and I can remember, sorry, I've just slightly lost my thread with that, but it's good sometimes to be to be sceptical, I think.
No, absolutely.
I'm sorry, I was talking about Fiona Bruce, and Fiona
Yeah.
Bruce was talking about, stopped at me and she said, "Don't you think you were credulous?" And I said, "Why?" I said, "You work for the BBC, you read the news, you don't ever say to the camera, 'I don't believe this,' this is like I said, when a certain level of people are telling you certain things, if the Archbishop of Canterbury is telling you something about what he plans to do with the Christian church, he's the top man, you're going to believe him.
Yeah.
He might be, the fact that his plane might change or he might be dissembling or.
Yeah.
I said, where do you.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, although you trust nobody, challenge everything.
Yeah.
It has to come to a point where you have to say, okay, you've explained that really well. I think that's true.
Yeah.
Or you don't say it like that, do you? You think,
no,
this works all the truth.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Absolutely. What was of all of the cases you looked at and the murders you looked at? Was there any that haunted you, that sort of stick in your mind? And
oh yeah, there's many that are memorable. And it's interesting also, I mean, people say to me sometimes, well, you've got a fantastic memory. Well, I have in a certain respect, but there's other things, that you think about and you think, gosh, I just forgot all about that.
Yeah.
So until you mention it now, of course it was.
Yeah.
Are there murders that stick in the memory? Well, obviously Rachel Nickell, which they eventually solved, was one of those, because while C11 were embarking on this plan, which they thought was a very cunning plan, with Paul Britton on board to guide them, and again, I was very sceptical about.
So Paul Britton was the
psychologist,
who allegedly looks at serial killers.
Yeah,
and then the plan was to introduce an female undercover operative, who I knew quite well.
Yeah.
And try and get him to confess or lead them.
Well, exactly. I think I've said this in the book, that it was important to understand. Lots of newspapers criticised police officers and said a confession. What was the point of that? It would have been no value at all.
Yeah.
That was to miss the point. It wasn't about a verbal confession. Yes, I did it, because she's inducing him anyway.
Yes.
Because she's holding out the offer of a sexual relationship. It was about, he's got to take her to the knife.
So it would be at that point, hopefully, you get the forensic evidence.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because and also, if it's down a drain in a particular location, only he's going to, and if it can be forensically linked to the murder, QED. But also, if you remember, the following year, a young woman called Jasmine Bissett was horrendously murdered with her daughter in Plumstead.
Right.
Jasmine Bissett was an attractive young woman in her 20s. Didn't look dissimilar in some ways, not identical, but dissimilar to Rachel. And there was a very interesting thing. She had a 4-year-old daughter, and the killer also smothered the daughter with a duvet and killed her, and did some surgical evisceration on Jasmine.
Oh, God.
And it's one of the DSs, I can't remember his name now on that, had to have long-term counselling afterwards. But at that time, there was another homicide lead in South London who dealt with that. And he and I were on good terms. I'd known him way back. He, in fact, had been on the flying squad at Tower and had shot dead an armed robber called talk about wheels and wheels. He'd shot dead Michael Calvey, who was married to Linda Calvey.
Kelly's down again.
Right?
Yeah.
So I went to see Nicky Banks.
Yeah.
And he and I, again, we had one of those, we can talk to each other about it.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't know why. He said, they've painted themselves into a corner with Rachel. He said, I'm sure in my own mind, the person who did Jasmine is the same person that did Rachel. He said, I'll tell you why. And he was the first person to ever point out to me. He said, we've had a series of rapes down here called the Green Chain rapes. He said, and I think the green chain rapist, at least in some of those offences, is our killer,
Right.
Jasmine. And he said, because, consider this, he said, Jasmine's accompanied by a little child. Rachel's accompanied by a little child. He said, 3 of our 7 rape victims were pushing children in buggies when they were attacked. He said, do you know, he said, how statistically rare it is for a woman to be attacked sexually when she's got children?
Yeah.
I said, no, he said, it's
Unheard of.
It's very, very rare.
Yeah.
And he said, and then, because I said to him, do you know what? I said, if the Rachel murder and your murder was in any of the county forces, they would automatically, if it's in South Wales or Norfolk or Cumbria, they'd automatically be looking at the two together and saying, chances are, might be wrong, but chances are we'll start on that basis. I said, they're not doing it on that. And he said, what's that? He said, because he said, they've gone so far. He said, to use mixed metaphors, he talked about, he said, they've gone so far in that direction they can't find reverse gear.
Yeah.
They've painted themselves in the corner. What you call it, whatever you will.
Yeah.
They've overcommitted.
Yeah.
And now they're going to get egg on their face.
Yeah.
And he said, that's why, and you sort of tend to think, I've grown up in a world where you tend to think that, I'd always believed I was well brought up. I've always was brought up to respect the police and believe the police were right and honourable and everything. And then you realise the police is just like any other business. My fucking career's, my arse is hanging over the edge on this.
Yeah.
This could be the end of me.
It's good and it's bad. Yeah.
But
they went down that blinkered route and they charged, didn't they? And they charged the wrong person. They convicted the wrong person.
And I've subsequently, a very good pal of mine who's in his 80s now, lives in Devon, became Colin Stagg's agent.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I've met Colin Stagg subsequently.
Yeah.
And I've sort of apologised to him. And I've said to him, and he's all right, Colin Stagg, And I said to him, the first time I met him, I said, I've got to tell you, Colin, I said, for a long time I thought you did it. I thought it was you.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about that. But that's how, was because people I trusted were telling me it's him.
Yeah.
There's no one else. Look at it, it's interlocking. That was the word they used about his interview. He didn't help himself at interview. It's one of these classic cases where instead of saying, I didn't do it, it wasn't me, I wasn't there, he just no commented anything.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't that bright.
Yeah. But it's
it's in about how not bright he is. It's in the book.
Yeah.
When he went to meet your friend at the Serpentine restaurant, he got on the bus going in the wrong direction. Bus route outside his house went to London that way and to Kingston on Thames that way.
He went the wrong way.
There's a surveillance team on him. He crosses the road and gets on the bus going to Kingston. Which threw them all into a fucking panic because they thought he's made us. He's fucking.
He's doing anti-surveillance.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is cements the fact that you think he's guilty. And that's that's the thing. You get these become completely blinkered in same retina. They become completely blinkered and they don't see outside of it. And then if there's bits and pieces come in that then they get wrong again, but then, as you say, cement it, and it's wrong. How long did Colin Stagg do in prison?
He did about a year in custody.
Oh, right, okay.
Because I went to his trial the day it collapsed, and I remember at the time we were in a state of flux at the Daily Mirror, and our line managers then weren't very good, and got into a terrible pickle over it all because I said to him, listen. I know loads of background to this, which I haven't been able to report up to now, but now I can.
Yeah.
Because the judge didn't just say, didn't just crash the case saying, the evidence has failed.
Yeah.
He went further. He declared him formally innocent there and then.
Yeah.
He said, it's not one of these, you're not going to walk away from here and say, well, we're not looking for anyone else.
Yeah.
No, you are looking for somebody else. He didn't do it.
Yeah.
Right? And and
how many years was it before they identified? Because I know Albert was involved in a subsequent review.
Yeah, it wasn't like I'm able to go over actually because I'm friendly with somebody who was going into Broadmoor trying to draw him out, But even though he was a good mate of mine, was very circumspect about his dealings with me around at that time because they were so nervous. But he did tell me subsequently that
Napa?
Napa, Robert Napa, he said he's one of these people. He said, you know, he'll come towards you, and you'll get in there, and just when you think he's going to play ball, you know, you can just look at him a long way, and he suddenly retreats back in and locks the door.
Yeah.
Come out again.
Yeah.
You know, psychologically.
Yeah.
And he said, but in the end, it was a tiny bit of forensic, wasn't it? But and of course, Napa had already been convicted of that other murder I told you about, right, Jasmine Bissett.
Yeah.
And was in Broadmoor for that case.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I can't remember, did he get convicted of some of the rapes, or did they? And there were a lot of cock-ups on Napa, weren't there?
Yeah, there was huge cock-ups on Napa. Again, just poor policing.
Unfortunately, there was some real lazy policing around Napa. I can recall the actions that would have flushed him out early.
Yeah.
Because there was a firearm or something in a box linked to him that was found was buried in a park somewhere.
Yeah.
And you know that there were ample opportunities to interdict him, and no one did.
Yeah.
But anyway, just coming back to Colin Stagg, I saw him and I said, I'm sorry, I thought you did it, but he's when I last saw him, he's quite what's the word about it? He's quite kind of relaxed about the whole thing. He's been doing these theatre shows, not an evening.
With Colin Stagg.
With Colin Stagg, yeah.
Making money from it.
Yeah. They called me a murderer.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I suppose the murders is sort of one side of it, but the sort of the more interesting thing for me is that organised crime, East London, and then I think when we started talking, you had like such an increase in the murder rate in London as the cocaine trade built up, and I think up to 240 something murders before they set up the homicide teams, and then you had the creation of these gangs now. I say not gangs now; they're effectively businesses, aren't they?
Very much.
I
mean, and they always were to a certain extent. I think what's interesting is, I don't know, you've probably got your finger much closer to the pulse now than I have, but you're right, around about 89, 90, 91, 92, we had a whole succession, including people like Whiting, of white Anglo-Saxon British gangster types getting shot dead.
Yes.
I used to think, why is this happening? And somebody said to me, I'll tell you why it's happening. People only get shot dead when they're suspected of either being a grass or there's, or skin.
Yeah.
And I thought that's really interesting, and it seems, although I'm sure it hasn't stopped completely, as if that kind of attrition rate has dropped a lot.
Yeah.
But whether that's simply because other ethnic groupings, as we've discussed, Albanians, Turks, whatever, have cornered that business now.
Yeah. Well, you've got like effectively two things really. You've got the rise of the Albanians taking over the cocaine trade. The Turks have always been around the heroin trade, but I think what you've also seen is that you've got the CEOs, if you like, of organised crime from East London, Canning Town, have got to such a level now that effectively they're outsourcing the work. They're making partnerships with the Kinnahans. Daniel and Chrissy Kinahan. They're sitting in in Dubai, controlling half the world's cocaine trade.
Yeah.
And I think they sit at such a level now that everything's going on down here, but they're creaming off the top.
But still having people from Glasgow shot in Marbella.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what's he been nicked for now? Daniel. 19 murders, I think it is.
Is that what they've? I
think
didn't.
that's
I knew he'd been nicked. I didn't know that was the
3
latest
weeks ago.
state of
Yeah,
play.
so, yeah, driving a Bugatti Veyron.
Get away.
Driving his Bugatti Veyron, gets stopped by the police in openly going, and yet he's got a $5 million bounty on his head from the DEA. It's incredible. They haven't got pussycat any. But I think that's the point. Is that I think that organised crime, the top tier now, sits so far above what's going on down here. They control it all as a business would. They're sitting up there and everything's going on below them. And they've created partnerships with the Colombians, the Albanians, the Turks. All of it's operating at that level.
Yeah, I as I said, I no longer have my finger on the pulse. And to be honest with you, I don't think I think I was fortunate enough to have my career in the time that I did, because I don't think any of my successors, everything has changed, but they would not. I don't think many of them would be having the kind of relaxed, trusting, informal conversations that I had through the bulk of my career that enabled me to be the reporter that I was. Because I always used to say, even though it's information I can't use now, the more you know about the methodology of the police, and the more you know about the methodology of the organised crime people, it enables you at some stage to be better at my job.
Yeah.
To be more informed, to be able to report that on for public consumption.
Well, I think the fact is now that you get arrested. If you were a police officer and you were passing information to a journalist, you'll end up getting nicked. And that's the reality. I think those days, the golden days of that type of journalism have gone, haven't they? Nobody
would have, contacts. Listen, I'll give you I'll tell you an interesting story about organised crime. There's a bloke I'm in regular touch with now. He's 80, and he was an armed robber who became a supergrass. And I met him 50 years ago, nearly now, when he'd just come out of the SG system, and I liked him because he was. He told really interesting stories, but he was never a bragger. Yeah. Most of his best stories were always about hapless incompetence and total failure. He did have some successes, but there were a lot of funny jobs in that. But he was handled by a joint Met Thames Valley team, because some of the robberies he was involved in, for various reasons, they obviously were getting good information out of sort of Slough, Reading. Yeah. They did some big, cash in transit robberies down there and the rest of it. The people that handled him liked him so much that he's still friendly with a couple of them now, right? But he passed me on all those people. And basically what they would do, or it would work like this, they might have a really good bit of work. They would tell him to tell me, right? Yeah. So he wasn't a policeman, so I would see him all right with that information. Yeah. What he did with that money after that, I don't know. I mean, he was really inside, because he had done quite a lot of serious burn. Yeah. So he'd been inside with all sorts of interest, with the Frasers, with a lot of organised crime people from that period, right. And he was a mine of information about, and even to this day, people come up in the news and he would say, I was on the same wing as him in whatever, because he went into a special unit as well, I think at Gloucester Jail at one time, when he'd done the business and everything. But really, really interesting guy. But you won't, again, I can't believe that anybody out there would have a kind of relationship like that, because he was really informative about how things work. Yeah, and
that is, you're absolutely right, and it's something that I've sort of discovered since leaving the police. People will sit and talk to you, and they'll tell you jobs that we've done in the police that you're then talking to people who are on the other side of the fence, who were involved in that job, telling you their side of the story, and it's interesting. Yeah, it all opens up. Listen, Jeff, we'll call it a day there. I've got to say, it's brilliant book. First of many.
You'll enjoy it. I absolutely guarantee you'll get a laugh out of it. Apart from anything else, you know, you'll recognise a few people, even if they're not named in there, along the way of various things.
Brilliant.
Great pleasure, Dave. Seriously.
Thank you very much.
And going forward from here, okay, you're probably better informed about the ins and outs of Rettendon than I am now, because it's been a big part of your life for so long. But going forward from here, if there's other things we can discuss, I would be delighted to help you and give you my view on things.
Yeah, no, that'd be really good.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it comes back to the same thing. I think I've had for a journalist. I think I had a unique life. Met all sorts of interesting people. I lent somebody a book a few months ago. It was the biography of. It's called A Biography of a Thief, and it was written by Bruce Reynolds.
Oh right, I got it.
Yeah, and I just went back to this. And he said, "Thanks for lending me that. It was really, really good." And I said, "You just put me in mind." I said, "I met Bruce Reynolds at the BBC once, and we were doing a joint interview on the Great Train Robbery with Nicky Campbell or something. And afterwards we left, and I said, "Fancy a cup of tea?" And he said, "Yeah, let's go and have a cup of tea." We walked to this cafe. I haven't got any fucking money. I had to borrow a $5
Bruce Reynolds. Brilliant.
But you read his book because it's fascinating. It's timepiece because he was a very substantial criminal before the Great Train Robbery.
Yeah.
You know, he was a proper, and and stuff like that about safe safe blowers, and proper, country house
old fashioned villains.
Yeah. But there's some, there's some that. I've had some really strange experiences in life. Some of them are in this book, but there's a lot more to come.
Brilliant.